Hi, everyone. We just wanted to create a training that can kind of quickly go back through what the expectations are for what we expect when we ask for your annual operating budgets. As we were going through reporting this year, there was definitely some of your budgets that were a little bit concerning just because of the lack of organization with them in them. Just remembering that you are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization, and there is an expectation that you need to be keeping your finances, no matter how large or small they are, that every amount of money that's coming into the organization and going out needs to be accounted for. And so we just kind of wanted to quickly remind you of a couple of resources that we have to help with this. Um, and please reach out if you have any other questions regarding this topic specifically. So, this is our sample operating budget document. Several of you did use this when you turned in your budgets with it, which is great. For those of you that currently are, maybe your budget's just in a Word document or it's just more of a list rather than in like a formal Excel sheet, we highly recommend that you use this template. So that is included in the email that we are sending. I would encourage you to take this to your boards and all discuss what the process kind of needs to be switching over your budget into this template. The reason that this template is so great is because you also are able to obviously change out whatever you need to. So, when it comes to, it's broken down obviously into your expenses and your income, and you might not have a salary, for example, because you might not have staff or benefits or whatever it might be. Maybe you don't have an official office, but you also want to be keeping track of in-kind donations. So there is a spot here at the bottom as well as how much total, if you put a number to it, donated services do you get. So that could be things like does your local police force help put up barriers during local events, or do security? Do you have donated things to your events or to your office if you do have one, or whatever it might be? Put that in your in-kind donations. And so you can do a quick Google search of what number kind of to put on some of those things, but then really just think about, okay, if we were to pay for our own barriers that the city puts up for our events, how much would that cost? And just use that as your baseline. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention, is that you should be keeping track of those in-kind donations, because that is helpful to you as well when you go out and you're talking to people in your community, and talking even to potential donors for the organization, to be able to say, we also get, this amount of donated services to us. This is the amount of people, the amount of services that we don't have to pay for. But we also need funds to be able to do more and to increase our impact. And so it's a really good marketing tool, as well as it's just important to be keeping track of. So that's the first thing I'll mention. Obviously, as I said, this is broken up into your expenses and income, which you should have broken out into two separate things. And so I know several of you also uploaded your profit and loss statements with your annual reporting, which is good. Um, but this really helps specifically break down every single activity you're doing. So what I would really recommend is going to your work plan. Hopefully you have a detailed work plan for every single activity that you are doing as an organization. And you're looking at, in that work plan, what and in the tasks that are being done for whatever it might be, whether it's an event or maybe you're doing local business education classes or whatever. What are, first thing you're going to think about is, what are the expenses for that? And then, do you make any income off of it? So really, you need to make sure that your budget is reflecting what is on your work plan. Obviously, there's going to be some things that don't have any expense or income, and that's okay. But there's several things that do, and you want to make sure that it's accounted for. So the goal is that your organization is yearly referring back to the budget. Your board is referring back to the budget on a regular basis. Your treasurer's checking in regular, giving updates. Are we on budget? Are we over budget? How are we accounting for that? All of those details, you should be checking in about that on a regular basis. So again, we have it broken up too. You can change even the overall categories, though these are tend to be pretty accurate. So if you have any operating expenses, again, if you have an office, if you pay for Wi-Fi, anything you might have in that sense, you probably all have insurance, hopefully, for the organization, for any events, things like that. All of that needs to be accounted for. Again, if you have any office equipment, was there any training that people on your staff did this year? So how much did you spend if you sent somebody to a community exchange, or how much did you spend if you sent someone to the Main Street Now conference? Whatever it might be, it's all broken out, and it needs to be detailed there. And then we have it broken out into design, promotions, organization, and economic vitality. So the idea is that again, you don't just have to use this amount of lines. You can add as many as you need to, and it's going to be different than these things. But let's say you do have a facade grant. How much are you as an organization spending on that facade grant? So on and so forth. So you kind of have to think about, is that facade grant money, is it given to your organization, which then you give out? How does that work? So make sure that that's all accurate as well. And then the same thing goes for the rest of the points. And then you might have some other, areas that you need to add in, and that's fine. And so then you should know really ahead of time, really at the beginning of the year when you're creating your work plans, you're budgeting ahead of time of how much do we think this is all going to cost, because you probably have receipts from the prior years. You have an idea. If you don't have an idea, you do your best to kind of budget in what you can afford based on obviously the funds you have as an organization. And then from there, if things change and it's a little bit more expensive, then that's obviously you'll adjust things as you go. Same thing goes for income. What are you making any, is the city giving you any funding as an organization? This is going to help kind of, again, balance out of, well, here's what we know we're going to get throughout the year. And you want to do things for sure that you're going to get. Don't put guesses of like, well, I think we might get this grant, or I think we might do this. I would say budget for what you can expect. And if you get the extra funds, amazing. That just gives you more opportunity to do more, do a different project or do something that maybe you originally weren't going to be able to because, that didn't work within your budget. So yeah, you're looking at, is anybody else, any kind of income that you're getting. So this includes, do you have, I don't know if we have on here. Yeah, we do. So if you have a fundraising drive, if you have donors, if you have, whatever it might be, um, any income from, we have sponsors here. So for an event, if you have a certain spring event and that a person gives you a, $2,000 sponsorship to cover that, that needs to be in your income so that, when you're overhearing your expenses and for the spring event, you're going to spend, I don't know, maybe $3,000, 2,000 of that's going to be covered. So on and so forth. So you need to be able to compare and look at that. Again, even if your budget is relatively small, this isn't just for organizations that have a large scale budget, because in fact, once your organization really hits over a certain point, where you're dealing with larger amounts of money, donations, you want to even probably go even beyond this and be working with financial professionals and stuff like that to help continue to improve and grow your budgeting process year to year. Um, but I know many of you, you're working with relatively small budgets, your newer organizations or smaller organizations. And so really you just need something to kind of keep you organized and on track. And so that's what this template will really help you do. So yeah, again, you'll kind of just go through, put any of the income. You can again add lines to this. You can edit it, make it your own. It doesn't have to again follow our exact breakdown, but we think this is typically what kind of you would be using anyways. And then you're able to really, then you're at the, again, you're able to look, okay, what's our expenses? What's our income? Does it work out? Does it not? Do we need to adjust? Because you always want to make sure that obviously you're not losing money every year. If you're losing money, especially if you have like large events or festivals that are costing you large amounts of money and you're not bringing in income through donations, city support, sponsorships, that is going to hurt your organization. And you want to at least have some money in the reserves as well. That should be an organizational goal to be working towards, building up your reserves, so that you also have emergency money, because that's important as well. So we just wanted to kind of quickly remind you of this, and some of that. The other thing that I will mention is that we've had some other really great trainings that go even a little more in depth than what I'm kind of touching on today. Um, this is a 10-step annual budget checklist that Jackie Swihart from Main Street America, she shared with us. We did and I'll make sure that you all get the link for this again, but we did a fundraising and budget training, I think last April, with Jackie. And so she kind of quickly at the beginning of the training touches on some budgeting practices. And she also she had her own kind of budget spreadsheet. So there's several examples out there. Again, I would encourage you just to use the one that I just walked you through, but there's a lot of different examples out there. But she goes through essentially the same thing that I just went through, kind of a little more in detail. And then she really gets into fundraising as well. So I know that's something that many of you might be wanting to improve or grow or even just implement into your organization. And so I highly recommend watching through that training. But this was something that she shared through that, and it really helps kind of give your organization a checklist to work off of, a reminder of how the budgeting process should go. And so on here it says, typically the budgeting process should begin at least 3 months before the end of the fiscal year to ensure that the budget is approved by the board before the start of a new year. So again, you really need to also be thinking through your timeline, of when do we need to be making sure that we're getting our budget. So this means that really too, you should be working ahead of time on wrapping up your current year's work plans and getting your work plans for the next year developed. So I would also recommend that your board just sit down and literally map out a timeline of the year of what you need to be doing as an organization. And that includes, you can add in submitting annual reporting for us, or whatever it might be, but really marking out those things so that your board is prepared for it, especially if you're an all volunteer board, because we understand that you might not have a staff person, but even if you did have a staff person, they're not going to do all this stuff on their own. The treasurer needs to be involved, the whole board needs to be consistently checking in on that. And um, so yeah, so this checklist kind of, again, determining that timeline, what's going to be the dates, how are you going to make sure that everything is approved and good to go before the beginning of the fiscal year? You need to be agreeing on your organizational goals. Also, what are your financial goals? So yeah, what do you want to programmatically do? But also, what do you want to achieve financially as an organization? And maybe you set some like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year goals with that. Maybe in 5 years, you want to have more money in the reserves, or you want to work towards hiring a staff person. So that's going to help you to also clarify, what are some of those annual goals from either like a strategic plan or something you all have just talked through, so that you can start thinking through, what do our fundraising goals, or do we need to have more discussion with the city, or whatever it might be. And so on and so forth. So I won't go through this entire checklist, but yeah, I mean, they're having you look at what is your current financial status, and being realistic with that. If there's things you need to cut from your work plan because financially, at least not currently, you can't achieve that, then you need to cut them from the work plan, because you need to be realistic about what you can do with your current finances. And then again, set those goals. If you want to be able to do more of those things, you're going to have to bring in more donors. So yeah, and then you're going to develop that draft budget. It's going to, it needs to be, so they have it broken up actually. So first you're going to look at your expenses, and then you're going to look at what those, projected incomes are going to be. And you're going to review that draft budget, approve it, all that good stuff. And then you're going to implement it, and you're going to continue to monitor and respond to changes as needed. That is key, because you don't want to just create it and then be like, all right, great. Well, we'll come back to that later. No, it needs to be consistently updated. So really, I'm looking at you, whoever of you are on the executive board, it's really a part of your job descriptions to make sure that the entire board is consistently being updated. Yes, the treasurer definitely, that is it's a financial role in the organization, but also the entire executive board needs to be consistently updating and checking in with, what are each of your committees doing? How much are you spending? All of that. So I will also make sure that this is the PowerPoint that Jackie used in the webinar. I'll send you the link to the webinar. But as you can see, she kind of uses a different template, which we have that template as well. But again, I would just say use the one that I have already walked you through. And then again, she kind of touches on that timeline or the checklist I just went through, and also mentions a couple other really great resources. There's a ton out there. I think everyone on our team would tell you we are not, we're not financial experts, nonprofit financial experts. We also aren't, we cannot give you any legal advice about finances. So you need to make sure you're also, I would really recommend making sure that you work with, an attorney to make sure that you're all good in terms of what's expected of you financially as a 501c3 nonprofit. So, one thing that some people forget about is that you need to make sure you're not doing membership based activity. That is a 501c6 activity, not a 501c3, and you can get audited. So, again, not giving you any legal advice or tax advice, but I would encourage you to go reach out to some professionals that do have expertise in that area and make sure that you're following what you need to be following as an organization. But Jackie, yeah, she touches on a lot of this in this more detailed presentation. And then she really gets into some fundraising pieces, which I think is also very important. So I hope this was helpful. We really, really would encourage you, especially for those of you, if your budget is currently just a Word document that's in a list form, or you have barely any detail to it, or whatever it might be, I highly urge you to make adjustments and change those, because first of all, we do expect that you have an organized budget that's accounting for all of your work that you do in the organization, but also just for the health and the growth of your organization. We want you all to have that as well. So please reach out if you have any questions. We have tons of fundraising and budget resources that we can send if this is something that you need more assistance on. So yeah, thank you everyone. We'll talk to you soon.